The Silent Observers. The Galactic Confederation's observation post hung invisible in Earth's orbit, its quantum-cloaked hull absorbing both light and detection signals. Inside, senior observer Zirath adjusted her sensory tendrils as she compiled her million-cycle report on humanity. The crystalline being had watched Earth longer than most of her species lived, yet the primitives below never ceased to perplex her. Another warning flag for species assessment, she dictated to her neural interface. Humans continue to exhibit contradictory behavioral patterns that defy standard classification. While still technologically primitive by Confederation standards, they display occasional bursts of advancement that bypass expected developmental stages. Her assistant, Nalvor, rippled his crystalline surface in the equivalent of a scoff. They're barely at Class 3 civilization status. They haven't even unified their planet or established permanent settlements beyond their moon. Zareth's surface darkened thoughtfully. That's precisely what troubles me. They shouldn't be able to do what they do. Take their recent quantum computing breakthrough. They skipped at least 3 preliminary stages we considered essential. Their conversation halted as emergency signals flooded their sensors. A massive solar flare, far larger than anything their predictive models had anticipated, was heading toward the inhabited sectors. Not just toward Earth. The blast would affect dozens of developing worlds under Confederation observation. Standard protocol was clear: observe, record, but never interfere. Primitive species either survived such tests or perished. It was the natural order that had governed the galaxy for millions of cycles. But as Zirath watched the humans' primitive detection systems light up with warnings, something unexpected happened. Instead of descending into panic, their global communication networks exploded with coordination efforts. Scientists shared data freely across political boundaries. Engineers worked in parallel across continents. They've detected the threat, Nalvor noted, but their technology isn't advanced enough to prevent the damage. We should document the aftermath for the Species Vulnerability Index. Within hours, humans had repurposed their global satellite network into a makeshift early warning system. They weren't just trying to protect Earth. They were broadcasting warnings on all frequencies, including several they shouldn't have known existed. Impossible, Nalvor whispered. They're using quantum entanglement principles in those transmissions. Their physics understanding is listed as pre-quantum. Zareth's observation protocols warred with her growing concern as she watched humanity's response unfold. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were trying to warn others. A species that hadn't even confirmed the existence of alien life was trying to save them. The solar flare struck. Confederation sensors recorded the damage across affected worlds. But Earth's warning had given others precious hours to prepare. On 3 different worlds, civilizations even more primitive than humanity had managed to shield their most vulnerable populations using the protection methods Earth had broadcast. They shouldn't have been able to do that, Nalvor insisted, his crystalline form vibrating with agitation. Their theoretical physics models are centuries behind the concepts they just demonstrated. It's as if they intuited the solutions. Zirath began composing an emergency report to the Confederation Council. After a million cycles of observation, she finally understood what made humans different. They didn't follow the expected paths of development. They didn't respect the boundaries of what should be impossible. The humans had suffered damage from the flare, but far less than projected. Already their networks were humming with reconstruction plans. More importantly, they were analyzing the data from their warning's effects on the upper atmosphere, theorizing about the possibility that they'd reached other worlds. They're going to realize they're not alone, Zirath said. This event, they'll detect the different ways their warnings were received and reflected. They'll prove the existence of other civilizations through their own observations. That violates the natural order of discovery, Nalvor protested. Species must reach Class 4 status before confirming extraplanetary intelligence. The protocols, Zirath interrupted, never accounted for a species like humanity. She began encoding her recommendations with the highest priority markers. They don't just break patterns, They create new ones. They don't just solve problems. They share their solutions, even with unknown recipients. As she composed her report, Zyreth monitored the ongoing human communications. They were already coordinating a more permanent warning system, discussing theories about the unusual atmospheric reactions that, she knew, were actually signs of other civilizations. Their scientific communities were ablaze with new possibilities. The Confederation must decide, she concluded in her report, whether to maintain our traditional observation protocols or acknowledge that humanity represents something unprecedented. They will discover they're not alone, and soon. The question is whether we want that discovery to come with the knowledge that we watched and did nothing while they tried to save others. Nalvor's crystalline form had stilled. All of his sensory tendrils focused on the data streams from Earth. They're analyzing the energy patterns from the flare's impact. Within days, they'll have proof of artificial structures in orbit around other worlds. They're about to force the entire Confederation to break its own protocols. Zyreth felt an unfamiliar sensation in her crystalline matrix. Anticipation. For 1,000,000 cycles, she'd watched humanity stumble, fall, and rise again. She documented their wars and their peace, their cruelty and their kindness. But now, as she watched them turn a natural disaster into a chance to reach out to unknown others, she finally understood what made them unique. Humanity doesn't just adapt to the universe, she transmitted in her final observations. They adapt the universe to themselves. And soon, very soon, the Confederation will have to adapt to them. The silent observers weren't going to be silent much longer. Humanity had just changed the rules of the game, and they didn't even know they were playing. Breaking protocol. 27 days after the solar flare event, Dr. Sarah Chen stood before her quantum imaging array, staring at data that would change human history. The patterns were unmistakable. Artificial structures in orbit around distant worlds, their energy signatures revealed by the flare's interaction with their cloaking systems. "Run it again," she told her eye assistant. The holographic display sparkled to life, showing the same results for the 100th time. Somewhere above Earth, watching them right now, were aliens. In a secure facility beneath Geneva, the Emergency Response Council had convened an unprecedented meeting. Representatives from every major space agency sat around a circular table, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of classified data streams. "We're being watched," Dr. Chen explained to the assembled leaders. But that's not the most important discovery. The data shows these observers have technology that could have prevented the deaths on Proxima B's colony. They chose not to intervene. The colony on Proxima B, humanity's first extrasolar settlement, had lost 300 lives to the solar flare despite Earth's warning system. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Admiral James Santos, his dark eyes hard with contained anger, spoke first. "Are you saying they could have saved those people? Our people? Their energy signatures suggest technology far beyond our current understanding. They didn't just watch us. They watched dozens of developing civilizations struggle against the flare. And they did nothing." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, head of the Quantum Communications Division, leaned forward. "But we did something. We warned everyone we could reach, even without knowing if anyone was out there to receive the warning." "Exactly." Dr. Chen's fingers danced across her neural interface, bringing up new data streams. "And now we know how to detect them. More importantly, we know how to reach them." The council spent hours debating their next move. Protocol dictated first contact should be handled carefully, diplomatically. But as reports continued to arrive from other colonies and research stations across the solar system, a different plan took shape. Dr. Chen found herself in her lab 3 days later, working with a hand-picked team of quantum engineers. They weren't preparing for first contact. They were preparing to break whatever rules kept the observers silent. "Quantum entanglement field stabilized," reported Dr. Raj Patel, his fingers flying across holographic controls. "If we're right about their communication methods, this should pierce their cloaking." They weren't just planning to reveal the observers. They were going to force them to face the consequences of their inaction. Dr. Chen had discovered that the observer's quantum communication network could be hijacked, turned into a galaxy-wide broadcast system. Signal ready, Dr. Tanaka confirmed. Every quantum-capable receiver within 50 light-years will get this message, including our invisible friends up there. Dr. Chen took a deep breath. They were about to break every first contact protocol ever written. But humanity had already shown they didn't play by expected rules. Transmit, across the galaxy, on thousands of observation posts, and in the great halls of the Confederation itself, quantum receivers exploded with unexpected data. Not just signals, but images, videos, stories. The human response to the solar flare, their desperate efforts to warn others, the lives lost that could have been saved. But it wasn't an accusation. It was an invitation. We know you're watching. Dr. Chen's voice echoed across quantum channels that had never carried human words before. We know you have your reasons for staying hidden. But we've seen enough death from isolation. We've lost enough lives to protocol. We're reaching out not in anger, but in hope. In Earth orbit, Zerath watched in astonishment as her quantum-cloaked ship became visible to human sensors. Somehow, they'd not only detected the cloaking technology, but had found a way to neutralize it. Impossible, Nalvor whispered. Their quantum science is decades away from this level, but humanity wasn't done surprising them. The quantum broadcast carried more than words. It carried plans. Designs for improved warning systems, methods for protecting developing civilizations from stellar events, proposals for cooperation. We can stay separate, Dr. Chen's message continued, or we can work together. We can hide behind protocols, or we can save lives. The choice isn't just yours anymore. In the Confederation Council, ancient beings watched in shock as humanity's message reached worlds they'd been observing for millennia. The humans hadn't just broken protocol. They'd shattered the entire paradigm of galactic development. Zerath found herself composing a response before the council could forbid it. After 1,000,000 cycles of silence, she spoke to her subjects directly. We received your message, she transmitted. You're right. Protocol has become an excuse for inaction. The Confederation must decide if its rules serve life, or if they prevent its flourishing. Within hours, quantum channels that had been silent for eons came alive with voices. Other observation posts broke their silence. Species that had been watched for centuries revealed their own discoveries, their own breakthroughs. Dr. Chen stood in her lab, watching the quantum channels fill with signals from across the galaxy. Humanity hadn't just made first contact. They'd sparked a revolution in how species interact. What happens now? Dr. Tanaka asked, her eyes wide as she watched translations of alien responses flood their screens. Dr. Chen smiled. Now we do what humanity does best. We adapt. We learn. We grow. And we help others do the same. The age of silence was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And once again, humanity had proven that the impossible was just another problem waiting to be solved. The price of compassion. The Confederation Council's emergency session marked the first time in 12,000 cycles that its crystal-spired chamber had hosted human representatives. Dr. Chen stood beside Admiral Santos, facing beings of energy, crystal, and forms that defied human understanding. High Arbiter Valthun, a being of pure energy contained within an ancient metallic frame, spoke first. Humanity has violated the fundamental laws of species development. You have forced awareness upon civilizations unprepared for the knowledge of other life. The penalty for such actions is isolation. Admiral Santos stepped forward, his voice steady. With respect, Arbiter, we didn't force awareness. We offered help. There's a difference. A difference your species fails to comprehend. Another council member, a crystalline entity named Axor, vibrated in disapproval. Each civilization must develop at its own pace. Your interference has disrupted patterns established over millions of cycles. Dr. Chen activated her quantum projector, filling the chamber with holographic data. These patterns you're so determined to protect. They're not laws of nature. They're choices. And while you've been protecting these choices, civilizations have died needlessly. The images shifted to show the responses they'd received after their galaxy-wide broadcast. Dozens of species, some even more ancient than the Confederation, had maintained their own secret observation posts. Many had questioned the protocols but never dared to break them. "Look at what happened when we reached out," Dr. Chen continued. The Proxians shared their atmospheric purification technology. The Centaurians offered their genetic preservation methods. The Taotians revealed their climate stabilization systems. Primitive solutions, or dismissed. Their civilizations are not ready for such exchanges. Primitive. Admiral Santos laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the ancient chamber. While you've been watching species struggle independently, they've been developing unique solutions to universal problems. Solutions you never considered because you were too focused on maintaining your hierarchies. A new figure emerged from the council shadows, Zarath, her crystalline form now bearing the marks of censure for breaking her observation protocols. "The humans speak truth we have long denied. Our protocols have become chains, not safeguards." The chamber erupted in argument, ancient beings debating in frequencies and forms of communication that human senses could barely detect. But they fell silent as a new hologram appeared, a live feed from a small mining colony in the Kuiper Belt. The images showed human scientists working alongside beings from 3 different primitive species, combining their knowledge to create something new. Together, they had developed a shield technology that could protect developing worlds from more than just solar flares. "This is what happens when we cooperate," Dr. Chen said softly. "Not one species dominating others, not rigid hierarchies of development, but genuine collaboration. Every species has something to teach and something to learn." High Arbiter Valthun's energy form fluctuated. "You cannot comprehend the dangers. There are species in this galaxy that would destroy others given the chance. Our protocols prevent chaos. Your protocols prevent growth," Admiral Santos countered. "Humanity has a long history of destructive behavior, yes, but we also have a history of learning from our mistakes, of choosing to be better. How can any species make that choice if they're never given the chance?" The quantum channel suddenly blazed with new signals. Across the galaxy, the civilizations humanity had reached out to were making their voices heard, not with weapons or threats, but with offers of cooperation, with shared knowledge, with hope. "You see," Dr. Chen gestured to the incoming signals. "They're not asking for advanced technology or weapons. They're asking to be heard, to contribute, to be part of something larger than themselves." Zarath moved to stand beside the humans. "I have watched Earth for 1,000,000 cycles. I have seen them rise from their darkest moments not through superior strength or technology, but through their ability to unite, to adapt, to see possibility where others see only rules." The council chamber filled with new holograms, images from across the galaxy of species working together, sharing knowledge, breaking down the barriers that had kept them separate for so long. "The isolation you threaten," Dr. Chen said, "has already failed. These connections, these collaborations, they can't be undone. The only choice now is whether the Confederation will be part of this new future or cling to its dying past." High Arbiter Valthun's energy form pulsed with what might have been resignation or perhaps understanding. "You have changed the very foundation of galactic society. The consequences, Admiral Santos interrupted, are that more species will survive, more knowledge will be shared, more lives will be saved. If that's a price to pay, humanity will gladly pay it." The chamber fell silent as the council faced a truth they had denied for millions of cycles. The galaxy was changing, and this time, they weren't the ones controlling that change. Humanity had shown them a different way, not through force or dominance, but through compassion and cooperation. The price of compassion wasn't isolation or punishment. It was the end of an old order and the beginning of something new. something that even the ancient Confederation would have to adapt to, or risk becoming obsolete in the galaxy they had once ruled unchallenged. Echoes of revolution. 3 months after the council meeting, the galaxy hummed with unprecedented activity. The quantum networks, once silent channels reserved for Confederation business, now pulsed with constant exchanges of knowledge and culture between species. In a sprawling space station orbiting Jupiter, Dr. Chen watched as representatives from 20 different civilizations collaborated in what they dubbed the Unity Initiative. Beings of all forms worked together, each bringing their unique perspectives to shared challenges. The Andromedan delegation has confirmed their support, Admiral Santos reported, joining her at the observation window. That makes 37 species now openly defying the Confederation's isolation orders. The station itself was a testament to this new cooperation. Built in weeks using combined technologies from a dozen worlds, it served as a symbol of what was possible when artificial barriers fell away. But not everyone celebrated these changes. The Confederation had responded to their defiance by attempting to establish blockades, trying to physically enforce the separation they could no longer maintain through secrecy. It wasn't going well for them. Another enforcement fleet turned back at Proxima Centauri. A holographic message flickered to life, showing Xyreth's crystalline form. They found 3 different species working together on a joint defense platform. The fleet commander decided that enforcing isolation on an already connected system was, what did the humans call it? Ah yes, closing the barn door after the horses bolted. Dr. Chen smiled. The Confederation was learning what humanity had known for centuries. Ideas, once spread, couldn't be contained. Every attempt to enforce isolation only sparked more cooperation between the primitive species they sought to control. In the station's central laboratory, a Proxian scientist's tentacles danced over quantum controls, while a Taocean energy being modulated the power flow. They were working with human quantum physicists to develop what they called a bridge, a network that would allow instant communication and cooperation across the galaxy. The Confederation never imagined this. Admiral Santos mused, watching the collaboration. They thought keeping species separate would prevent conflict. Instead, they prevented solutions. Reports flowed in from across known space. A water world facing ecological collapse was saved by atmospheric modification techniques developed through the combined efforts of 3 different aquatic species. A young civilization on the brink of destroying itself with nuclear weapons shows a different path after witnessing the possibilities of peaceful cooperation. But perhaps most surprising was how the Confederation itself began to change. Younger members, inspired by what they saw, began questioning millennia of tradition. Some even broke ranks to join the growing network of cooperating worlds. "We're tracking a new phenomenon," Dr. Tanaka reported, hurrying into the observation deck. "The quantum networks. They're evolving. The combined knowledge and perspectives of different species are creating new patterns of communication, new ways of solving problems." She brought up a holographic display showing mural-like patterns spreading across galaxy maps. Where species collaborated, these patterns grew stronger, creating webs of connection that transcended physical space. It's not just technology or knowledge being shared, Dr. Chen realized, studying the patterns. It's ways of thinking. Each species brings their unique perspective, and together, they're creating something entirely new. The Confederation's attempts to maintain control had backfired spectacularly. Their enforcement fleets found themselves facing not weapons, but invitations. Their threats of isolation were met with offers of inclusion. Their power, based on keeping species separate and dependent, crumbled in the face of growing interdependence. A message arrived from High Arbiter Valthun himself, his energy form showing signs of strain. The Council requests dialogue, not to negotiate terms of surrender. There is no surrender when there was never truly a war. We wish to understand. As Dr. Chen prepared for another council meeting, she reflected on how far they'd come. Humanity hadn't just broken the Confederation's rules. They'd shown the galaxy a different way of existing. not through dominance or isolation, but through genuine cooperation and mutual growth. They still don't fully understand, Admiral Santos said as they boarded their quantum-enhanced shuttle. They think this is about technology or power. It's about something much simpler. Dr. Chen nodded. It's about reaching out instead of holding back. About choosing to help even when the rules say you shouldn't. About seeing different not as dangerous, but as valuable. The revolution they'd started wasn't fought with weapons or won through force. It was built on shared knowledge, mutual respect, and the simple human belief that helping others wasn't just right. It was necessary for everyone's survival. As their shuttle entered quantum space, Dr. Chen thought about all the species now working together, all the problems being solved through cooperation rather than competition. The Confederation had tried to maintain order through separation. Humanity had shown that true stability came from connection. The echoes of their revolution would reshape the galaxy not through destruction, but through creation. Not through conquest, but through compassion. The age of isolation was ending, and something new was beginning. Something even humanity hadn't imagined possible. A new dawn. 1 year after humanity's first quantum broadcast, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The Grand Council Chamber, once a place of rigid hierarchy and strict protocol, now hosted representatives from hundreds of species, each contributing their voice to a new form of galactic governance. Dr. Chen stood at the speaker's platform, addressing not just the physical assembly but countless beings connected through the newly completed bridge network. The quantum neural interface she and her colleagues had helped develop allowed instant translation and understanding across all species barriers. A year ago, we faced a choice, she began. Accept isolation as the price of safety, or risk reaching out to others. Today, we see the results of that choice. The chamber's holographic displays showed scenes from across the galaxy. The Proxian Atmospheric Restoration Project had succeeded beyond expectations, their world now hosting researchers from dozen species studying its revolutionary approach to climate repair. In the Tau Ceti system, a joint research facility had developed cures for diseases that had plagued multiple civilizations for centuries. High Arbiter Valthun, who had once threatened humanity with isolation, now served as part of a diverse council that included representatives from previously primitive species. His energy form pulsed with what the humans had learned to recognize as thoughtful consideration. We believed we were preserving order, he addressed the assembly. Instead, we were preventing evolution. The Confederation's greatest error was not in watching. It was in failing to learn from what we saw. Admiral Santos, now serving as Earth's primary representative to the new galactic cooperative, stepped forward. The greatest discoveries of the past year haven't come from advanced technology or ancient wisdom. They've come from different species looking at the same problems in different ways. The evidence was undeniable. The combined perspectives of multiple species had solved problems that had stumped even the Confederation's most advanced minds. A group of young civilizations, working together, had developed a way to safely harvest energy from black holes, something the Confederation had deemed impossible. But perhaps most remarkable was how conflicts between species had decreased, not increased as the Confederation had feared. When civilizations focused on solving shared problems rather than competing for resources or dominance, new possibilities emerge. Zareth, her crystalline form now bearing marks of honor rather than censure, presented the final reports from the old observation network. For millions of cycles, we watched and recorded. Now, we participate and learn. The difference is remarkable. The bridge network hummed with activity as more species joined the discussion. Ideas flowed freely across the quantum neural interface, each civilization contributing its unique perspective to the galaxy's growing collective knowledge. This is not the end of something, Dr. Chen continued. It's the beginning. We've learned that true strength doesn't come from isolation or superiority. It comes from diversity, from cooperation, from the willingness to see through others' eyes. The assembly watched as a new visualization appeared, a real-time map of galactic cooperation, where once there had been strictly enforced boundaries between civilization levels, now there were countless connections, each representing ongoing collaboration between species. Humanity didn't set out to change the galaxy, Admiral Santos reflected. We simply refused to watch others suffer when we could help. We refused to accept that rules were more important than lives. And in doing so, we helped create something none of us could have achieved alone. The old Confederation's protocols had been replaced by a new framework, one that recognized the value of each civilization's unique perspective, while encouraging cooperation and mutual support. The rigid hierarchy of development levels had given way to a more organic network of relationships based on what each species could contribute and learn. As the assembly concluded, Dr. Chen stood with representatives from worlds that, just a year ago, had never known of each other's existence. Together, they watched as another solar flare, similar to the one that had started everything, approached the galaxy. But this time, there was no panic, no helpless observation. Within moments, the combined warning and protection systems developed through galactic cooperation engage. Not a single life was lost. This, Dr. Chen said softly, is what becomes possible when we choose to reach out instead of hold back. When we choose to help instead of just watch. When we recognize that different doesn't mean inferior, it means potential. The new dawn they had helped create wasn't just about technological advancement or political reorganization. It was about a fundamental shift in how species viewed each other and their place in the galaxy. As the assembly dispersed, countless beings returning to their worlds through quantum gates or joining the ongoing discussions on the bridge, Dr. Chen received one final message. It came from a newly discovered civilization, one that would have been deemed too primitive for contact under the old rules. "We see your lights in the sky," the message read. "We hear your songs in the void. We thank you for showing us we are not alone." Humanity had done more than break the silence. They had shown the galaxy that the truest measure of advancement wasn't technological achievement or age. It was the willingness to reach out, to help, to grow together rather than apart. The new dawn had arrived, and its light would continue to spread, one act of cooperation at a time.